for?
Brilliant.
Take it away, Alex.
I love the laugh followed by the complete silence.
Yes.
What's next? What are we all here to
do? Welcome everyone to this week's digital download. Rob, the longest running LinkedIn Live.
Longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live.
Thank you. So this week we have the pleasure of having Teresa Anderson with us. So Teresa and I had a conversation at the beginning of the week about an interesting topic, which is go-to-market strategies and how they're evolving. And we started talking about the challenges that businesses face today. And I started to think about the layoffs in tech. So I was on a webinar yesterday and I heard from Pavilion that there have been 160,000 layoffs in tech in Q1 this year alone, which is more than the entire 2022.
Cisco just made an announcement to the stock exchange about that things are quiet.
160,000 layoffs in Q1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been over 200,000 layoffs in tech this year. In the US.
Yeah. Just in the US.
So I think the 160K is global. That's what I heard yesterday. But yeah, so it kind of begs the question, what do companies need to do to tackle this? Because if there wasn't a pipeline problem, if there wasn't a problem with close rates, then we wouldn't see this amount of layoffs. And so, when we think about the go-to-market strategy and the importance, I think, as we all do on this call, of empowering people to walk digital corridors effectively, embrace digital, embrace social media, in order to think about social media more commercially, I think that if we broaden that conversation to span not just sales and marketing, but the entire company, companies would have a much better opportunity to raise their visibility, increase the number of conversations that their people are having, commercial or otherwise, and begin to solve the pipeline problem that they're facing. So with that, shall we bring Teresa into the discussion?
Well, sure, but should we go around the horn first?
Oh, of course. Let's start off with Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. As you can see from my label, actually, I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm delighted to be here.
Rob.
Hi, all. I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results. We help startups scale, and Flywheel Results is a proud DLA Ignite partner.
Jensen.
Hi all, Jensen Abbott here. I am a B2B social interaction influence coach at Supero, also a proud DLA Ignite associate.
Will.
Hello everybody, William Shorten here. I'm also an associate with DLA Ignite and proud to be so. And apart from that, I'm also a trainer and executive coach.
Tracy. Oh, you're on mute.
Wait for it. I'm muted. I was like,
you're used to going last. That's what it is.
I know. I was like, Tim is still in front of me in this loop. I'm Tracy Borison, the Canadian representative on our panel today, owner of TLB Coaching and Events, where we're all about digital brand experience and bringing digital brand experiences to life. And I, too, am a proud DLA Ignite partner.
Cool. Tim?
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm also the author of the first ever social selling book. You may or may not have heard of it. It's called Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
We should have all had our copy then, shouldn't we? You should have warned us so we could all.
Some of us do.
Yeah. Mine's just over here.
Cool. And I'm Alex Abbott, founder of Supero, and I'm your host today, and have the honour of welcoming Teresa Anderson to the call.
Hooray!
Hey.
Hi, Teresa.
Hey,
Hi,
Teresa, do you
everybody.
want to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am very happy to be here. Let me first say that. You guys are great. This has already been fun. My morning already feels like it's going to be off to a great start. So thank you guys for all this enthusiasm to close out the week. I work for Agorapulse. I'm the head of marketing for our English-speaking countries. And we are a social media management platform. So we allow you to do all your social communication in one place. So that's kind of the tie-in there. I'm
Excellent.
happy to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome indeed. So the topic today is what is GTM or go-to-market? And I think the big question is, how does it differ from a traditional marketing / sales org? Certainly when we spoke earlier in the week, we were talking about how the go-to-market strategy is going to change.
Right. So go-to-market is super exciting for me because it solves a lot of the problems that I've been banging my head against in marketing. And I can only imagine that salespeople from the sales side have also felt, as well as customer success. So it's that sweet spot where marketing, sales, and customer success impact the growth of the business. So if we look at the old model, like marketing only cares about MQLs. That's what they're being judged on. That's what they're being paid on. So if somebody casually glances at your logo with semi-interest in your color scheme, that counts as an MQL, right? They glanced over there, boom, we're going to capture it. We're going to count it as an MQL because that's what we're being judged on. And then we're going to push those MQLs over to sales. And sales, well, they're going to say, well, this guy, he lives in a part of the country where we don't have really good coverage, but I got to sell him because that's what I'm being judged on, and those are my numbers. And then, so they sell them in, and then they get to customer success.
Teresa, I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt, but can you, for those of us that aren't sure, explain what MQL means?
Oh, yes. I'm so sorry. I'm becoming an acronym machine the longer I'm in tech. So
we all do.
Qualified lead. Yes. You live long enough to become what you hate. Is that what happens? So anyway, a marketing qualified lead is an MQL. So marketing, that's usually the marketing benchmark. We've got to create leads that we qualify, which also becomes a whole other hour. We could talk about how marketing decides to qualify leads. But that glancing at a logo would be like the lowest benchmark. This person showed the slightest amount of interest in our product and in our company. So we're going to count them as a qualified lead. That's the joke. That was actually a joke. If anybody.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
So for marketing, we're going for that. Sales, a lot of time will have SQLs or sales qualified leads. So that does translate over to kind of how the old funnel has worked. And then poor customer success gets this poor person dropped into their lap who isn't a market fit, who never should have been sold in the first place, and then they churn. And then the CEO is standing at the end of this chain of catastrophe saying, why is my business not growing? So what go-to-market strives to do is to get everybody on the same team shooting for the same goal. So it doesn't matter how many MQLs you get marketing. If those people aren't a good fit and stay for a year or 2 years or 3 years, that then becomes my benchmark. Not just that MQL up front, but also the NRR, or the net retention rate, net revenue retention, which is basically, that the company is actually growing. It really doesn't matter if you're selling $1 million in sales if you're losing $1 million in customers at the end of the tenure. So you really have to focus on not letting people churn, making sure they're a good fit, and that goes right through. So that becomes everybody's goal.
Have you heard the term, since we're on acronyms, BQL?
Yes,
like a
get on it.
So the
Which one?
BQL, buyer qualified lead.
Never heard that one. So you gave me a new one, Alex.
You heard it here first.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is a business qualified lead?
Well, so the buyer qualified lead. So really a true reflection of where the buyer is in the buying journey, as opposed to where marketing or sales thinks the lead is.
Got it. And I would call those like buying indicators, or like I'm watching them to see when they're going to throw up that flag that they're ready to buy.
Yeah.
So in marketing, that's how I would see it.
Yeah. So are you operating kind of MQL, traditional MQL, SQL kind of approach yourself for Repulse?
Well, it's one, again, this is a big shift that's happening across, the industry. So we still, of course, even when you make the switch to GTM, those old habits are hard to break. It's hard to stop looking at that number if you've looked at it for so long. So yes, we, like so many companies, are moving into a go-to-market focus, where we're paying more attention to that NRR versus the MQLs. Again, the acronyms, but that's a shift. It's like any kind of change, and especially if you're doing institutional change, where the whole organization's trying to make a big shift in thinking, that takes time.
Yeah.
And NRR, again, that's your retention rate. That's
right
after you've landed them
Yes.
and kept them for a year.
Yes.
Isn't that a lagging indicator, though? And an MQL is more like a leading indicator. Hey, we hope this is going to drive business. So how do you suss out the difference between what I'm doing today is impacting the business today versus what I'm doing today? A year from now, I can tell you whether or not that's effective.
It is part of the shift. I've internally been calling it a numbers detox. So basically, if you're used to focusing on MQLs and you're watching that number go up and down daily, right? And you're watching your traffic go up and down daily, all the things that marketing cares about on the very, very front end. And those things don't stop being important. You're still watching those as indicators, but it stops being the overarching goal of the company. Like, you see how that's kind of even in itself a subtle shift? So yes, I still want to drive traffic and MQLs at the front as part of the marketing team, but I'm now framing those things in the front, not as an end to themselves, but as part of this bigger process that covers the entire customer life cycle. So they're indicators, but they're not the be all end all.
So if someone looks at your logo,
yes.
it was your example.
Yeah.
Is that now an MQL?
Well, and again, how every company determines what's an MQL is hotly contested. It's a screaming match behind closed doors. You can only count it if they meet this benchmark. That's everybody has to decide that for themselves. The marketing team always wants the benchmark to be lower, right? The marketing team always wants it to be, hey, they clicked on that great white paper I created. That's an MQL. Sales will tell, then again, from sales point of view, sales doesn't really necessarily want that to count, because how much actual buying interest does someone have just because they read your white paper on some industry topic?
Yeah, because I get calls from HubSpot, from salespeople saying that I'm an SQL or an MQL or something, because I would have downloaded some white paper and I would have said, well, no, actually, HubSpot, you're really great at creating reports and research. I need it for blogs.
Right.
I'm not going to buy HubSpot.
And that's 100% a sales point of view. But that's where you are, and that's where you are on your goals. You're focused on, when you get that MQL handed off from marketing, you're like, this is trash. I don't want this. It's not somebody that's going to buy. So then we get into the idea of having an SQL, where sales now takes my MQL and goes, all right, I guess this one's possibly I could sell. And then they accept it as an SQL. So then now sales has qualified it. The problem with that is, when sales qualifies it, they own it. So if they don't sell it, they're going to come back to him and say, hey, you qualified this lead. This is one that you said was good, and you still didn't close it.
Yeah.
Paula.
Yeah. Paula, in case you missed it earlier, we're talking about go-to-market strategy, and we're on the topic of MQL. Yeah, marketing qualified lead. Thank you, Heather. And
I wasn't sure whether Paula was being sarcastic. So Paula, I thought you knew what it was, and you were being sarcastic because you were generating a discussion about.
Yeah, it was a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question.
Okay.
Because when we talk about, I've been in marketing, I've been in sales, I've tracked MQLs, I've tracked SQLs.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they're not aligned at all. So Teresa, from a GTM strategy perspective, are we really talking about saying, okay, it's not bad to track MQLs, it's not bad to track SQLs, but we're really looking at this more holistic, how do all of these things play together, and how can we like be a team as a company to make sure that we're getting the type of business that we want?
But and the type of business is going to stay long term. Because
Right.
I can tell you, if you see any growth models, I saw a quote the other day, which was retention is the new acquisition. So we talked about those layoffs. We talked about pipeline. The reality is that bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, if I really want to go old school with the metaphors. But the reality is that you have got to hold on to every single client you have, and the longer that you stay, the lower your cost per acquisition, the more opportunity you have to sell them and upsell and expand that business to make them a stronger partner. So yes, that holistic view that everybody's on the same page is we don't want to shove around with all the analogies today. I don't want to shove a round peg into a square peg into a round hole. I want this customer to be such a good fit that we build this really strong alliance that pays off for years and years and years to come for both parties.
Because as Tracy said, in this holistic world of sales and marketing, ultimately, and in SaaS, what we're doing is that it's not just in the old days, you used to sell a piece of software and disappear into the sunset and come back again 10 years later for the person to replace. Right. Now the person can basically say, I don't want it anymore, just switch it off.
Yep.
So in a way, what we're doing is that we need relationships.
Yes.
And we need to look at it holistically rather than basically just burn through a whole bunch of people or because they've looked at the website or whatever. Sorry, your NRR stands for what?
Net revenue retention.
Net revenue retention.
So Teresa, you and I were having a conversation yesterday about exactly this, and I think that the idea of a go-to-market strategy is really compelling. Mm-hmm. We blur the lines between marketing and sales and client success.
Yes.
And we make sure that everybody is having the same objectives, and we make sure that that we're all working together. So any of the arguments that there would have been between you gave me a lead and you told me it was a really hot lead, and in fact I phoned the person and they don't want to talk to me, and all of this kind of thing, hopefully evaporates. But the challenge surely is that there's a big difference in every organization between what you need to do and what you need to do. And I think that part of the issue that we have with any kind of strategic initiative like this is that in theory it sounds really good. Mm-hmm. Obviously sales and marketing need to work more closely together. That's our objective. Okay, so what does that actually mean? How are we going to empower the people to all put relationship at the front end? Because still, as you yourself said, the silos exist. You've been measuring MQLs, glances at your logo for a long time. That's a KPI that the board and your management are comfortable with you delivering, because they have bought in at some point to the fact that is on the road to revenue.
Yes.
That may have been true 10 years ago or 15 years ago or even 5 years. May. I benefit of the doubt. 10 years ago, that may have been true. Today, that almost certainly isn't true. Or if it is, it's a significantly more complex a truth than simply saying, you glanced at my logo, therefore you're aware of my brand, therefore you find some love towards my brand, therefore you're going to be a customer at some point down the road.
Right.
So how does this play out in reality within an organization that thinks, go to market, that solves my problem, we're all heading towards the same thing, what are we going to do?
Yeah, so I think that one of the big things with go-to-market is that it has to be owned by the CEO. And I think that's a big shift for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people try to put go-to-market under the CMO, right? Yeah. But the chief sales officer, or the new one, people say chief revenue officer, because in reality, when you take the objectives of marketing, sales, and customer success, and you make them one goal, you're creating a revenue team. It's where we're supposed to be one team. So chief revenue officer, that's a title that you see that might want to take go-to-market. But it really, again, if you follow where I've kind of become a convert over to a certain thinking on go-to-market, and I'm happy to share a book about that if anybody's interested later. But that if you follow that methodology, it has to be owned by the CEO because they are the only one that can start that organizational shift in thinking. So it has to be the whole company. It can't just be marketing trying to drive it. It can't just be sales trying to drive it. Customer success definitely can't drive it. It has to be the CEO.
Mm.
So this is a top-down initiative rather than a grassroots up initiative.
Yep. It has to be.
And can I?
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go finish your thought, Teresa.
I was going to say, otherwise, the temptation of the marketing team is to steer towards marketing. The temptation of sales is to steer towards sales. I think that it has to be the CEO because he's the only one that's saying, hey, at the end of the day, I'd like to have a company that's growing. And so all three of you need to get your act together if we're going to grow. So go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah. So my question here, because one of the things that I experience a lot when we're talking about top down is that there's also people who have experienced what I like to call corporate trauma. So your CMO and your sales leader and your chief customer officer or whatever we're calling people these days have come from an organization where sales, marketing, and customer success are all different departments. And we have different KPIs and it's not, we haven't participated in those types of activities and being aligned. So what are some of the things in terms of connection or community or like joint KPIs that need to come down from the top to actually ignite this new, hey, we're a team mentality?
Right. And honestly, you take it back to that example, that very broad example of it does not matter if we're making $1 million if we're losing $1.2 million in people churning. Like from a CEO's perspective, if I don't want to go bankrupt, that is the kind of thinking I have got to have. So I think it does. I mean, where you pay people, they will follow for sure. So, the minute you change up how we're being paid, you are going to change up the conversation probably pretty rapidly. It'll take one cycle before people are like, oh, I need to pay attention to completely different numbers because I'm not getting paid the same way. So I think that's another reason why the CEO has to own it, because those very real incentives, you have to start at the top. That's, just to make it really organizational and pervasive through the company. So yeah, it changes really fast when that happens.
And the interesting thing that I've found in my experience is the data is already there. Teresa, you talked about the white paper that marketing counted as the MQL,
right.
And you follow those MQLs to a year later after purchase and renewal, and you can suss out how many of the people renewed versus how many did not related to that white paper. And now, was it really an MQL? Maybe, maybe not. And then you start directing those metrics back to that initial contact. And the white papers are no longer MQLs, but these activities that we weren't even really tracking, suddenly these activities are the customers that stay with us and the ones that grow with us. And that's when you get that flywheel effect, because the silos have been broken down. You're working together to do more of those things that were working and less of those things that aren't. Right. But now, because you're talking to each other, you are looking at the data together.
Well, what you have just illustrated, Rob, is the reason why RevOps people are now the kings of everything. Because they really are. Like where that was a in the shadows position even 2 years ago, that person is now sitting at the executive table. So that's going to you're just going to see that increase. The reality is that if you use, of course, I'm just going to assume that everybody watching this has a CRM because that's become a basic staple.
Teresa, can you just explain what RevOps is for people, please?
Oh gosh, me with the acronyms today. I literally have become what I hate. This is terrible. So revenue operations is what people call RevOps, and that's basically the team that's in charge of your CRM. So I was about to
CRM means what?
Customer relationship management. So it's like your database where you keep all of your contact records. And a lot of times, as Rob was explaining, you can follow a deal in your CRM from their first touch. So what did they first watch or read or download? How did they come into the system? And then you can literally, in a CRM, and we use HubSpot, you can actually follow their progression all the way through for eternity. For as long as you have your CRM active and that person is in there, you can go back historically and you can track them right through. So it's a brilliant tool. And it's perhaps because we have that data now, Rob, where we can actually track somebody with that kind of granularity, which for years we couldn't. That could be one of the reasons why go-to-market now is even such a big idea. And because we can now do it, we can actually see what's working and what isn't.
In sports, we call that analytics.
Yes. Marketing.
Is that what people call attribution, Teresa?
Yes. Right. So and then now we're getting a little bit more again why RevOps is so important, because RevOps can then tell you multi-touch attribution. So then this is where social selling can play a really strong role, as long as the sales team is documenting. So this is a conversation I'm actually having right now. If my sales team is interacting with this person on LinkedIn and they're having this relationship building going on inside of what we would call a dark social channel. So a dark social channel would just be anywhere where we can't track and see what's happening from an attribution standpoint. So if you're having a conversation on LinkedIn, which would technically be considered.
So Teresa, if you're having a direct message conversation on LinkedIn,
yes.
One of the reasons why businesses don't like it is because it's not taking place in the CRM.
Exactly.
Which is why it's deemed as dark social. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is easily solvable if you create a field in the CRM for the salesperson to go in and started a conversation on LinkedIn. That's all it takes. It's a drop-down choice. And then you could even have a drop-down that said started a conversation, third conversation, fourth conversation, and you could literally push that person in the CRM through. Now in marketing, I know, hey, give me everybody who's had three email exchanges with somebody on LinkedIn. You see where it can start to flow together? So the idea is that social selling and dark doesn't have to be dark. It's only dark if we don't do the admin part of it. And I know how much salespeople love admin, but this is where we are. We've got to start documenting, or else it didn't. We can't make it effective if it's not in the CRM and documented, so that we know what's going on.
We had a top seller who was always butting heads with marketing, because marketing was always just adding one more field to the CRM system. And his pushback was, if I spent the 2 minutes that it takes for this one more field with every customer that I deal with in a day. So I'm particularly sensitive to that. I understand the value from marketing side of collecting that data so that you can act on it and so that you can evaluate and iterate. So, I also understand from the salesperson's perspective why they don't want just one more field, 2 more minutes across the board. So that's where, again, RevOps comes in and automates as much of that as possible.
Course. But sometimes it can't be automated, especially some of this dark stuff and some of the social selling stuff. But here's what I'll tell you in pushback in marketing's defense. So we'll get this marketing and sales war going. Yeah. This is what I see on the sales call. Salesperson's asking questions I would love to know in marketing. Oh, they're writing it down on a piece of paper. There goes the piece of paper. Would have been just as easy to put that into the CRM, people. Just as easy. I see it all the time. So, the reality is that I hear that complaint. I see that pushback. I think we also have to be very mindful all across the board that all of everything that we're asking you to document, we have a useful use case for. So if I'm asking you to document that you started a conversation on LinkedIn, it's my responsibility in marketing to tell you how I'm going to use that. Listen, that's great, because in a week, I'm going to do a campaign and I'm going to grab up everybody that you've been having conversations with on LinkedIn, and I'm going to send them this special campaign that'll help us move the ball along for sales.
I think that's the problem. I think
tell me.
And I think that's the problem, because I'm a salesperson. I've got 2 lists, 2 CRMs. I've got my Excel spreadsheet, which is the real one. I've got the one that I put in the CRM. And let's be honest, that's how most salespeople operate. They've got 2 CRMs. They've got one for the company and one for themselves.
Yes,
and,
of course you do.
And salespeople are very, very possessive.
I know.
This is my customer. Don't you dare email my customer. But the reality or the opportunity here is that the salesperson learns that this is not about you. This is about the fact that you're doing this really well. This is about how we can take the learnings from what you're doing and we can share those with other people so they can be equally successful to you as you. So we don't go out of business. So you're not looking for another job.
Right.
No, but joking aside, the reality of this is that people that are sophisticated enough to do true multi-channel stuff, so they use the telephone, they use email, they point people at white papers, whether they're yours or someone else's,
right,
they use social, they're all about having conversations and building relationships. The challenge that we see and that indeed we face in every organization is not the fact that you're a social rock star. That's easy. Challenge is in getting everybody to be more social, because there's that bell curve of competency, and there's 2 or 3 people at one end in every 10 that are brilliant. You just got to wind them up and point them in the right direction, and they more than pay for all of the investment and stuff. There's 2 or 3 people at the other end, and those people can't cook, won't cook. They either don't want to do it or can't do it. And then you've got some people in the middle who are the people that you can affect. And actually, the learnings from the high performers and teaching those to the people that want to do it and can improve, that's where the win is at an organizational level. Because one salesperson that's got 20 calls a week, that's great, but that isn't a transformational change. What is if every salesperson has 20 calls a week. And it's how do we replicate those best practices, I think.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, if you want me to chime in on that, what I hear you saying is a strategy that's really sound for sales, which is building relationships through social media. I think it's really I think it's a really important line that everybody in the company should see as their responsibility to step up and have conversations and build relationships and share their knowledge and share their expertise and be thought leaders in the industry. I don't think anybody in marketing would fight with you on the fact that that's irreplaceable as far as making your brand credible and trustworthy. And so the more you do that on social, the more.
You'd be surprised. There are some in marketing that will fight with us on that.
Point in my direction, Rob. I'll set them straight.
Happy to. See, I sit in enablement, so my job is to bring those 3 realms together to play nice. And
yes,
it just depends.
Yeah, well, you should love go-to-market because it
basically, absolutely.
Yeah, it makes your role so much more pivotal.
So, okay, I keep coming back to this. We clearly have a divide between sales and marketing, right? And Mark had a really great point about like who has the relationship with the buyer. Usually the salesperson, right? Because historically, marketing activities have been distributed based on behalf of the company. So it's not based on an individual person building a relationship with you. It's the company being visible, having touches, and those types of things. And so I'm wondering, I just feel like that's a really different mindset between the 2 departments. And I would put client success, having been in client success myself as well, into more of the sales camp because you own the relationship with the client, right? Like now I'm building a one-on-one trust-based relationship with them. And so what does that mean for marketing? Is marketing now responsible for like one-to-one relationship building, or how is it built to support the one-on-one relationship building? Who owns a lead?
I can give you an answer to that. So if you have to think, obviously the marketing team cares all about the brand. And I know we throw that around and people get tired of hearing about it. This is the brand. This is how the brand talks. This is how the brand acts. This is what the brand offers to the marketplace. But at that point, marketing is the voice of the brand, right? So yes, they want to get to know you and they want to get to know their customer success person and the person that actually sells them, but they also want to know what the brand is and what the brand stands for and how it feels, and that has to resonate with them as well. I think that I've heard this a few times. I'm actually interested to hear what you guys have to say about it, but I do feel like the sales team sometimes wants to be independent of the company's brand. And I think that we have to realize that the brand, whether or not we want it to or not, the brand has a feeling and is an entity that is involved in your selling equation. And we have to tend to that brand reputation. We have to tend to that brand's voice. We have to make sure that that brand is seen as credible and expert, which is just makes your job continuing that relationship. So I'm going to say this one last thing, and then I want to hear what you guys have to say about it too. But I had a sales team that I worked very closely with. And one of the things I did for them is every week I gave them what I called a hot sheet. And what I did in marketing was I went out and I got things that were happening in the industry, little news tips, reasons for them to talk to their clients. And I would put them into this hot sheet, but put through the filter of the brand. Why does this matter? How is this relevant to our audience? How is this relevant to the brand? These are the kinds of words I would give it the brand's flavor. And then I would share it with the sales team and say, hey, here's some things happening in the industry. Here's how our brand looks at this. This is a starting point for you to have a conversation. And I think that's a really good analogy for the role that marketing plays in supporting, not trying to overwhelm the individual salesperson's voice and flavor and personality, but to bring the brand's personality and voice to the table as well.
What you
But
said
Teresa,
there,
that's not common.
no, what you said there is how marketing will be in the future within organizations. You know, the job of marketing will be to empower the individuals to have conversations and steer them in the right direction and give them the raw materials to create their own narrative.
Yeah.
I do disagree to a certain extent with what you said about brand.
Okay.
And the reason I do is that I think that every brand creator and owner wants to have a brand that if this was a person, this would be whoever. This would be Orlando Bloom. You know, very beautiful and really articulate and really funny.
I would love that brand.
Yeah. Sign me up. Do they have a newsletter? I'd like to get signed up.
That's what, yeah, I thought you might. That's what every. But when you think about brands, Ferrari has a brand that people can articulate what the Ferrari brand is about.
Right.
People can articulate what the Apple brand is about. People can articulate what the Four Seasons hotel chain brand is about. People can't articulate what your company brand is, or mine, or 99% of companies out there, because actually, frankly, they don't care. They're buying a commodity.
Yeah, you're going to lose me there.
No, because I think what I'm buying when I buy Agora Pulse, I think I'm buying you, because you're the person that I've had the conversation with. And, you know, today you're at Agora Pulse and tomorrow you'll be at Oracle and the day after that you'll be at Salesforce. And actually, well, you won't, but you know what I mean. You know, people are transient. And actually, you own the relationship. You own, because you're the only person at your business I've spoken to, you own the relationship with me. And when you move, the relationship. So
I'm going to play devil's advocate here with you.
Please do.
And so you've got a relationship with me and you like me, but my company has a horrible reputation if you go search my company name. If I find out that your brand is known for breaking its promises, I find out your brand is known for in the marketplace for being a tough company to work with. I got several people out there that bought whatever you're selling and it became a brick. I didn't use it. They didn't help me. It wasn't supportive. So that your reputation with that person, your relationship with that person is not going to overcome that brand reputation. They are not going to buy from you.
I would absolutely agree, but I don't think that's brand. I think that's in execution. You know, brand.
But that is what marketing does. Marketing executes on behalf of the brand. So it might be failed marketing. It might be failed branding, but it is still playing a role in your sale.
Absolutely, but when we personify a brand, you know, so what person is this? Where do they shop? How do they dress? What music do they listen to? In order that we can humanize brands, the reality is that you can be doing the best possible job in the world about that. So I see Agora Pulse and I think, oh yeah, that's that friendly person that I like to spend time with, and they're always there to help me when I want them. And the reality is outside of your control because you're not in client success and you're not in tech. So
Right.
when the technical department says, oh, it's fallen over again, it's the fourth time today that the platform has crashed.
Mhm.
At client success, I say, I've got an emergency, I've got to get this out the door, and I have to get it out the door today. And they say, sorry, we're closed for lunch now,
Right.
so we're not going to do anything for the next 2 hours.
Right.
And actually, that's outside of your control. So yes, execution is crucial. You know, if you as an individual who I'm buying through,
Mhm.
or you as a company do not see true on the promises that you've created, that's one
Mhm.
thing. But I think that so often companies use the word brand and they see themselves as like an apple in waiting. You know, you'll have
Right.
seen the news that Apple is now the third most valuable thing behind the US and China. It's the biggest, most valuable thing in the world, bigger
Right.
than the entire UK economy in terms of its value.
Right.
And that's because they have got brand nailed. You know what you're buying with those people, and they meet your expectations. You know, and you can personify that. It's a very well dressed German guy with square glasses. You know, that's exactly the kind of the Apple feel. You know, it's
Mhm.
beautifully turned out and it's very effective and efficient.
Right, but it sounds like, and so I want to make sure I confirm that what you're saying, I'm understanding it properly before I respond. So it sounds like you're saying brand only matters if you're big.
No,
Okay.
although lots of smaller businesses think that brand matters to them. And actually, I think the value of brand in the truest sense, that personification of brand and what it stands for and what the brand values are, that only matters once companies have got to a particular
Oh
critical mass.
no. So have you ever put butter in the refrigerator and you left it uncovered and then it tastes like whatever else you have in the refrigerator?
Mhm.
That's brand. Everybody has brand. Your company is absorbing all of the flavors and the conversations and the content. Everything that's happening that mentions that company's name is those smells in the refrigerator. You can't help but have a brand. You have, and if you don't manage that brand, if you don't control that brand, if you don't drive the narrative around that brand, then there will be no substance that smells good to anybody looking for your brand to buy. And I have to tell you, people don't just buy from one individual. They do their homework. They do check around to see how a brand is perceived in the marketplace. Social proof, I would tell you, would be neck and neck and on the same plane as those social relationships that you build with people. So I disagree that being small means brand doesn't matter. I think brand absolutely matters to everybody. Yeah, you have one whether you want one or not.
Yeah, I think it matters progressively less though, and people matter progressively more within the business because we're a company of 20 people.
Mhm.
So the fact that, I mean, I know you've spoken to many of us, but you've only spoken to me, therefore you know 5% of the business.
But I've also been to your website. I've also looked around the blog and stuff.
I'm gonna jump in here, and I love what's happening here, but I think I feel like this has turned into a competition between marketing and sales again. The whole point, I think, salespeople create brand experiences. Marketing creates brand experiences. Customer success creates brand experiences. Delivery creates a brand experience. Operations creates a brand experience.
The product,
A brand is a combination of all of those things. No matter how I touch it, exactly what you were saying, Teresa, right? I've gone to your website, I've talked to Adam, I've been on the digital download. These are all different pieces of the brand puzzle. And the problem isn't that different people are providing different pieces of the puzzle. The problem is when the pieces don't match. So the experience that marketing is creating isn't aligned with the experience that sales is creating, or isn't aligned with, like, I'm going to talk about, I remember in like marketing school when they're like, oh yeah, this is, I'm like, 9 out of 10 dentists agree that this is the best toothpaste, right? This is what I always still call it marketing fluff. It's not provable, right? I could find 9 out of 10 dentists who approve of this. I could also find 9 out of 10 dentists who approve something else, right? It's fluff. And it's not that it's bad or it's not that it's a lie, but if it doesn't match up with the rest of the experience, then people will be like, something seems off. And I always think the biggest problem with brand is when it breaks. So when something marketing says doesn't get mirrored by sales, or a promise doesn't get kept by client success, right? Like, so I wanted to like We're not. At the end of the day, that if we want to be scalable and growing, what's happening, it happens on a daily basis between sales and marketing departments in organizations. And this is why we're here talking about go-to-market strategy, because it's about, okay, let's like take the temperature down a little bit here, friends. And like, we're all working together. This is what this person is doing to work together. This is what this person is doing to work together. And if we have a problem, we don't see amongst us how this is aligned. Let's talk about it. But our goal at the end of the day is for all of us to be aligned. So we are a brand. We are a brand that people can trust.
It's good that Adam brought that forth, because I think a lot of people feel that way about marketing. And they do feel like marketing is spinning up fantasy at the front end that isn't held true all through the brand. So I think that's a valid point. I think a lot of people do think that. I'm here to voice to you that marketing is not here to create promises that you can't keep. In the best case scenario, marketing is getting information from the CRM at every stage of what's happening, right? And so now in the CRM, I can see what people are actually consuming. I can see what they're actually doing. And now I can make sure that our brand at the front end is delivering on what you guys are seeing through the rest of it. It is one thing for sure.
So the friction between sales and marketing, the friction between what Adam was saying and what Teresa was saying is, if I heard Adam correctly reading the tea leaves here, you can have the best brand that you want. If your brand is Apple, but my customer doesn't want to talk to an iPhone. My customer wants to talk to the person that can help me acquire an iPhone. Whereas the traditional marketer is going to tell you all of the great stuff of the brand that is Apple and the brand that is iPhone. But Teresa, what you hit on at the start of this is what I refer to as social enablement. In the context of the brand, you had provided all of these resources to sales for having conversations and for understanding where that goes. And that's where I was saying, that's not common. That is not typical, but that is where this is going. Done right, relationship building can start with marketing, empowering sales and client success to have the conversations in the context of the brand. And by getting on the same page of understanding what the brand is and where we want to go, but also realizing that it's about relationships and conversations, not just what color scheme do we use and so on. I forget the exact analogy that we're talking about, logos and color schemes, but that's where marketing hasn't been. And that's where the friction, I think, comes, because I have my own Excel spreadsheet because I've got to do it my own way.
What we do.
Exactly. So, so I think that's where, as we're lowering the barriers, as we're breaking down these silos, social enablement by marketing and by sales training, sales enablement, revenue enablement, whatever you want to call them, those are some of the steps to take forward to have a greater role of relationship building in the go-to-market strategy.
You said, Rob, as we're taking down these barriers between the different silos, and I think that, you know, we're playing devil's advocate with one another on this call.
Sure.
You know, we all see the benefit of a go-to-market strategy. We all see the benefit of removing these barriers between the different teams within an organization. But what I certainly increasingly see when I talk to organizations is that things are getting tough. So organizations are hunkering down into that old siloed behavior. You know, so actually, if I deliver more MQLs, I'll be better. If I'm more selective about the things that I move from an MQL to an SQL, then I'll be better off because I'll be converting a higher proportion of those leads. And what I see is that as we head into perhaps more challenging economic times, more and more organizations are afraid to try something different, and they're going back to the things that they know and love, even if those things that they know and love don't work anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear any pushback on that. That is very much true. That's very much human nature.
Again, I want to address Rob's question, but Paula mentioned something earlier about like getting over our ego, and I'm wondering, Teresa, in your experience, like what are some things that you see help people break down this, like Rob and Adam saying, like I have to manage my separate leads, right? Like because maybe that's a little bit of ego, maybe it's a little bit of trust issues, but like there's like people, individual employees in sales and marketing, client success, having an experience of, and I think the overarching conversation does, at least for me, come back to ownership, right? Like who owns this account? And it's very rarely about like, we as Agora Pulse own this account. It's more about Adam owns this account or Tracy owns this account. So are there any things that you have seen that help kind of like break down those walls between the silos? If what we're seeing is happening is more walls going up?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I would tell you that is probably on the table at 95% of executive meetings at every meeting that they have. No one wants to see this happen. The pressure that pushes us to do our worst behaviors instead of our best behaviors is real, and it's human. The more scared we get, the more we hunker down and pull back into our old ways. Again, I think that's the reason why this has to be led by the CEO. I think you have to point people in the right direction with the right incentives. I think, again, people follow their paycheck. So if you incentivize in a different way, you will get a different behavior. And I can't see a faster, quicker way to do that. Anecdotally, I would say, unfortunately, for whatever reason, sales teams tend to talk to other salespeople and marketing people tend to talk to other marketing people. And then customer success tends to be off on its own. And usually the conversations happening between marketing and sales are contentious. So I think that if I were doing this, one of the things that I like is assigning a marketing and a sales and a customer success person to talk once a week on a coffee. And you rotate that and have everybody having conversations with one another. The reality is that at marketing, I am on the front of this whole equation. Just know that I am starved for the information that you have access to every day. I need to hear what the customers are saying to you. I need to hear where their experience is breaking down, because that helps me at the front end create those messages that will help the brand deliver on the promises that we're making. So don't think that marketing is in some ivory tower where you don't have something really valuable that we need to hear. So anecdotally, I would say there's ways to break that down as a team. And I think that's by putting people together. And but if you're doing it organizationally, then I say, look at your compensation structure.
I think there's something there which really resonates, Teresa, around kind of leadership, because you talked about CEO being really involved, but it's then what's happening at the next level down. So what's happening at the sales director and marketing director level? Are they really role modeling those behaviors that you're wanting to see in the rest of your teams? And I think the other thing that kind of springs to mind is, a lot of the time we wait to be told or allowed to do things. So, as somebody who's working in marketing, what's stopping you from saying every so often to one of your sales contacts, look, I'd love to come out on the road with you and experience what you're going through. So how can you take kind of accountability and responsibility for yourself to kind of oil the wheels of the process?
Yeah, so we share sales calls. I don't know if other organizations have the tools and the ability to do that. I try to listen to, and it's going to sound like a low number, but I try really hard to listen to at least one sales call a week, just to keep me fresh on what I don't know the teams that use Slack or something like Slack, but I as a marketing person, I'm in the sales channels, listening to when they win deals. I'm also in the customer success channels because we are very fortunate. We have a very robust underpinning of our organization. So we have Slack channels dedicated to customer success issues and problems. And we all have access to get into those channels and listen to what's going on. And sometimes I am able in the sales channel and in the customer success channel to offer a resource that we have that can help solve a problem that they're having. So I think those are really good tools. But I do think that marketing has to take it upon themselves to seek out that information. I think that salespeople have to realize that by documenting in the CRM, and I know that's painful sometimes, that's giving insight into for the marketing team into your pains and problems and what you're running into. So and then customer success, same too. Documenting, I think, is really big.
So we've had quite a number of comments in the chat, and I apologize for not calling them out as often, but we have one here that I wanted to get your opinion on, Teresa. Would love to hear your views on the difference in approach B2B versus B2C. And thank you, Rob Turrell, for adding that.
And for people, just so they know, B2B is business to business and B2C is business to consumer, in case.
Yes, acronym soup today.
I know. From the top of the show to the bottom of the show, we got them all. So the question to me is, does a go-to-market strategy differ from B2B to B2C? Is that what we think the question is?
Sure. We'll take it wherever we want.
Yeah, I think as a structure, as a go-to-market methodology, if you again, I'm happy to share with anybody after this the book that I've read that I follow. They're thinking lots of people have different views on go-to-market and how to do it. But I think go-to-market does not matter if it's B2B or B2C or direct to consumer, B2C, business to consumer. So direct to consumer, DTC. So I don't think if you're following a methodology for go-to-market, you'll see that it's absolutely interchangeable. It does not matter if you're going from that point, from that operational standpoint. It doesn't matter if you're direct to consumer or B2B. Of course, it matters the brand that you create. Of course, it matters your actual content you're creating and the sales methodologies you're following. But at the go-to-market level, it does not matter if you're B2B or D2C.
And just to add to that, when you are selling to the direct to the consumer, there's typically one buyer involved. Mm-hmm. When you are selling to a business, very rarely is it just one buyer or one decision maker, which is why, in my opinion anyway, relationship building becomes even more critical. If you've got 5, 6, what are statistics telling us now? As many as 10 people involved in a purchase decision, you want to have a relationship with as many of those possible decision makers as you can. So it almost enhances the one's ability to communicate with their audience, enhances the sales process in B2B even greater than you would expect in B2C.
Right. I mean, and we're talking about the role of social media. That's a different question. We're talking about the role of social media and building relationships on social media, the difference between D2C and B2B. There's big differences there. If we want to have that conference, that's probably a whole other hour too. But from a go-to-market standpoint, it would be the same.
Are there any more questions you want to pull out, Rob? Because there was Rob also asked, isn't tension between sales and marketing sometimes healthy?
Oh, I used to think of it as like the yin yang symbol, where you've got the two kind of, and that tension between the two kind of runs the wheel.
Two black eyes.
I've that before.
Two black eyes. Each person has a black eye.
I think that works, right? That totally. We're taking it out to the edge, but it still works. Yes, but I would tell you that there were, like in anybody who's ever been in a dysfunctional family will tell you that you learn how to adapt.
So everybody, just to
I don't want to call out everybody. I'm sure that one guy is out there with the totally healthy family. I haven't met him, but he's there, right? But yes, so human beings are very adaptable. We can make unhealthy things and turn them into some kind of forward motion. And I think that's what we do. I do think I think ultimately, if all you have is tension, you can make tension work for you in some way. But just like with a healthy relationship or a healthy family, I think this shift to go to market takes that tension, which we used to all kind of make do with, and it's being replaced by something much more productive in a much bigger and more dramatic way.
And on that note, I think we're coming to the end of the show today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We're at the top of the hour.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Teresa, for coming on and,
Oh, gosh.
and debating. It's
Brilliant.
been
Yes.
excellent.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Teresa.
Good.
Thank
My
you
total
to
pleasure.
all of the people commenting. Fantastic exchange in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to read all the comments.
Cool.
So thanks, Teresa. Appreciate it, and thanks to Rob, Mark,
Tracy, thank you.
Yeah.
and we're here next week.
Yep, I'll be in the audience. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, bye,
So
guys.
Bye,
LinkedIn
all.
cuts us off on the hour, so we're on from a LinkedIn perspective. We're cut off.